Hello, sweet people. We're going to go ahead and get started, even though it's my understanding that I-30 is not working with us tonight, so we may have some people coming in a little later. So don't stare at them when they come in, okay? Be nice. Welcome to Tuesday Evenings at the Modern. I'm Terry Thornton. I'm Curator of Education here, and I'm so glad you could be with us tonight, those of you that are sitting in the room and those of you that are joining us live stream. We are very happy to have you. Just to establish, I think everyone here and perhaps everyone out there knows that Tuesday evening is an ongoing lecture, or maybe more appropriately presentation series that is free and open to the public. We've been going through the spring, but next week we have a break, and then we finish up the spring 2022 series with a sociologist and self-described scrounger, Jeff Farrell, as he presents his unique practice in conjunction with the publication of his most recent book, Last Picture, published by Utopia Projects. So I hope you'll come back on April 19th for that. Jeff is so many things, and one of them is entertaining, so I hope you'll come back for that. Tonight we are very happy to have the dynamic duo of Tamara Johnson and Trey Burns here to fill us in on their joint efforts as well as their individual practices as artists. Trey has an MFA from Savannah College of Design, and Tamara an MFA from RISD. The couple lived and worked in New York before arriving in Dallas in 2018, when they almost immediately made their presence known, jumping in with both feet into the Metroplex's art community. Almost immediately also co-founding Sweet Pass Sculpture Park, a 501c3 nonprofit arts organization which provides space for temporary, which they have described as a permanent space for temporary projects, which I think is significant, so I wanted to get that right. As artists and educators, Tamara and Trey have an affinity for supporting the ideas and work of others. Their ambitious and charitable efforts have been recognized with a Nasher microgrant, an NEA grant in conjunction with the Wasaic, New York, projects in New York, and grants from the City of Dallas Office of Arts and Culture in 2021 and again in 2022 for their alternative education program, Sweet Pass Sculpture School. Tamara is now launching a public art commission for the city of West Sacramento, California, and both artists have shown locally at ex ovo projects in Dallas. Most recently, How to Fold a Fitted Sheet in 2020 for Tamara, and Recent Landscapes for Trey, which he closed on December 2021 with Baked Potato Essay. Explaining, quote, not as an explanation of the work or the show, but as a vehicle for an expansion of the ideas, which I think is something of a glimpse into the intelligence and humor of both of their practices. So as stated in the description of tonight's program titled Working Landscape, in addition to insights on individual and joint endeavors as artists, Trey and Tamara will also share how they continue to keep a sense of hope and humor about the future of contemporary art and how creating alternative spaces for artists is more important than ever. So if you would, please join me in a warm welcome for Tamara Johnson and Trey Burns.
Hello, hello. Yes.
Hello? Yes.
Excellent. I was told that Ethan Hawke has spoken to this microphone before. It's called Hawk, the Hawk. So if I'm licking it or breathing into it heavily, I'll apologize now. Okay, so we're so happy to be here. I'm Tamara Johnson.
I'm Trey Burns.
And first, just a few thank yous. Terry, thanks so much for inviting us to speak tonight. We're really happy to be here. Amy and Clancy, thank you so much for helping us organize, and for all the modern staff keeping the lights on for us today. Really appreciate you as well as all of you guys who are here. I think I have one of my students from class Biz, you're getting extra credit, like I told you before. So with that, we'll get started. We've got this fancy clicker and lots of good images and slides for you guys tonight. But this presentation is mainly about Sweet Pass Sculpture Park, the project that Trey and I started upon moving to Dallas, like Terry said, in 2018.
That's right. So since opening Sweet Pass, we've challenged ourselves to learn more about the site where the park sits and its history in Dallas, in order to have answers for the questions that naturally arise when you're working with artists. So this narrative layout comes from a text that Tamara and I started back in 2019 and have expanded for this presentation. And it's called Soil, Surface, Sky, a brief and incomplete site history of Sweet Pass.
So like Trey said, 3 sections. Soil is going to be looking at the physical geography of where Sweet Pass is located. Surface is going to be looking at how we and other artists have interacted with the site. And Sky is going to be looking at kind of the speculative future of Sweet Pass. So hopefully by the end, we can answer all your questions about Sweet Pass and Dallas. So here we go.
Okay.
Oh.
Your man in the...
Yep, here we go.
Okay, soil. So on the backside of the skyline, West Dallas sits in the floodplain of the Trinity Archicosta River. Long before DFW, this was indigenous land. For thousands of years, various peoples cohabitated with a vast sea of Blackland Prairie. The Prairie, a riot of life whose network of roots could sometimes reach 15 feet deep. For settler colonialists, this prairie offered an incredibly fertile soil that would first be plowed for food, then cotton, then later folded into ever-expanding development. Slide. Okay, so West Dallas was home to La Reunion, a failed socialist commune that holds a special place in Dallas lore. The failure of this commune is partially attributed to the soil's inability to support the group's imported European seeds. In the early 1900s, the discovery of high deposits of chalk, limestone, and shale in the ground, the key ingredients of cement, caused a former La Reunion colonist by the name of Emile Ramond to start manufacturing concrete. This industry boomed, and West Dallas ground was physically used to construct key portions of the built environment in what is now the tangle of surrounding sprawl. West Dallas later became home to Cement City, or Cemento Grande, a company town for Mexican immigrant laborers for the Trinity Portland Cement Company. All that remains today is a cemetery, the ground, a resting place for the bodies of laborers.
So West Dallas was not formally annexed by the city until 1954, finally bringing subterranean pipes for running water and sewage. After being deemed a Superfund site by the EPA in 1995, 50 years of buried contaminants from a lead smelting plant owned by the RSR Corporation had to be removed from the ground. In the late 90s, a stratum of dust was also added from the destruction of the West Dallas housing projects following a segregation lawsuit that found people of color were discriminated against in housing assignments. Today, much of the ground around West Dallas is flattened, staked, and primed for new large residential developments, all direct replicas of SketchUp renderings. The real estate developers bought out our neighbor, David. He had his family home right across the street from Sweet Pass, and he lovingly goes by the name Animal. If anybody came to the park in 2018-19, he also had a pack of about 15 chihuahuas that would greet you as you came into the park, and he became a good friend to us.
Piranhas.
Yeah, they were like little Chihuahua piranhas. So they bulldozed the house. He still comes by, and drives in circles on the plot, leaving tire tracks in the dirt and weeds. He pointed out to us where the balloon is in this picture. Quote, "That used to be a house there. The lady who lived there, she was real nice and her daughter was real pretty, but she was older than me. There's a basement under there. Might have been a storm cellar, but they buried it." So Trey and I are still in search of this mythical buried cellar.
If you dig down through the layers of soil in the park, you will eventually reach a fine sedimentary sand laid down as a result of prehistoric river flooding. I read that in these sands you can find fossils of tigers and bears, mastodons, and sloths. In all of my digging in the park, I've never found a sloth fossil, but I have found a Blockbuster membership card from 1998. So,
Rare.
yeah, rare gem. So to this day, we still harvest crops of various car parts from when the lot itself was an illegal dump for the truck mechanic next door. That mechanic shop eventually became Aaron Cluley's first gallery, and then that space became Ex Ovo, and now it sits vacant. And who knows what will come next? Maybe one of you will open up a space there. Please do.
The logic of sculpture, it would seem, is inseparable from the logic of the monument. By virtue of this logic, a sculpture is a commemorative representation. It sits in a particular place and speaks in a symbolic tongue about the meaning or use of that place. Rosalind Krauss, Sculpture in the Expanded Field, 1979. So for us, this quote really resonates with our project Sweet Pass. We look at this history of Dallas, however problematic, not to make like a very sad case against Dallas, although we are in Fort Worth right now, so this might be the target audience for that. But more to help us understand where we are in West Dallas and what it truly means to make work in this particular space, and then how that can kind of echo and reverberate in our present day and our time spent here.
Surface. So some of you might know this story, but Sweet Pass began as a Google Doc called Sculpture Ranch, an open-ended doc that we started after a long subway ride back to Bushwick from the Met one afternoon. And after Tam got a visiting lecture position at SMU, we packed up and came to Dallas. When looking for a live workspace, which doesn't exist, we spotted a fenced-in acre lot on a road called Fabrication Street. And said Fabrication Street. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to start a sculpture park. So we signed a lease a week later, and Sweet Pass opened its gates in 2018. I don't know why I say that. Nestled in between a concrete factory, new apartment construction, and a handful of locals. So Sweet Pass's name references the concept of a buhl, or a hidden valley, a place that opens to travelers only under special conditions. A mountain pass holds in the imagination a point of entry or a safe passage through what might be a challenging terrain. I said it again. It can also serve as a vantage point in the journey to see where one has gone and where one is going.
So Trey and I, we have this lot. It's 2018. We put our first show together in, I think, like 25 days. And we just feel like this could maybe be the place where we could start a permanent space for temporary projects. Working outdoors, one isn't confined by walls. The context of the landscape guides you. No doubt there are challenges, precarious Dallas winds and heat, insane mosquitoes that we cannot kill, despite our efforts. The manual labor that comes with cutting the grass, trimming the trees, and moving the earth around. We look at it like a horizontal sculptural plane that we are constantly adding to and removing from. Trey and I are artists. Sweet Pass is an artist-run space. This project we consider very deeply an extension of our own studio practices and love of sculpture. So just a few slides on our own work. In the past, I've worked in non-traditional spaces making large-scale works, both indoors and outdoors. This is a fake pool I made in Queens, New York. My work touches on the language of domestic objects, the vernacular of shared experiences, and the ways in which materials, ranging from rubber to concrete, that's a concrete picnic in the park, can connect to and create new meaning in public and private spaces. This was a piece I did at the height of the pandemic, deviled egg and pickled okra tower, a la Brancusi. Trey is an installation and lens-based artist interested in the built environment and a deep fascination with the uncanny glitches in Texas landscapes. This was a group show at Exovo in 2019. His work has explored infrastructures, both hard, soft, and ambient, which envelop our lives and entangle with the natural world. Recent show that Terry mentioned, Recent Landscapes. In our work, we share a fascination with popular culture, the underbelly of the American experience, and a sense of humor towards failures in both bodies and buildings.
As an exhibition space that utilizes the word park, we want to provide a space where visitors can engage with thought-provoking and joyful experiences with multiple points of entry. In 2020, we worked with Ignite Arts Dallas to host Black Power Naps by Nabil DaCosta and Fanny Sosa, a multi-sensory exhibition featuring grass-covered mounds for lounging, tie-dyed hammocks, a soothing soundscape, and wind chimes. In a time of intense protesting and marching in the Dallas heat, Black Power Naps wanted to create an exhibition that offered rest to visitors.
With the park, we think a lot about curation with a lowercase c, not only the lofty endeavor of crafting exhibitions and the intellectual labor that goes with it, but looking more at the root of the word curation, which means to care. This takes the form of a lot of different things, but mostly generosity and service, and also in the care that we give to the artists that we work with. To date, we've given over $20,000 to support artist projects, and we plan to give a lot more. Additionally, SweetPass has provided professional development, mentorship, and critical feedback for artists who aspire to work in the public sphere. I'm trying to brainwash all the sculptors everywhere to make public art. This came to fruition outside the gates of the park with Neva Parajuli in 2021, producing his first large-scale public project very close to the park, a couple streets over, called Chin Chin and Muk Muk. We provided Neva with mentorship and fabrication assistance from concept to installation. He was making paintings, and I said, I think you're actually a sculptor. So we left him with a toolkit to apply to his future public projects, and for his first large-scale outdoor project, we think it turned out pretty well.
Sort of, this goes without saying that the pandemic slowed down everything for everyone. And at SweetPass, during the lockdown, we began presenting projects at a much different pace than what began as something more rough and ready. So out of circumstance, we were given the valuable commodity of time in which to consider the context and landscape. And we had more time with the artists to craft their presentations to the public. So the resulting projects reflected that additional fermentation and became much richer as a result. Being outdoors, we were also able to have much more intimate gatherings at the park and give visitors more time with the work. Artists like Corsicana resident Eric DeLuca, in his response to the migratory patterns of the monarch butterfly and how that intertwined with the history of regional Jewish immigration. In addition to planting cultivated milkweed at the park, an important food source for monarchs, he installed a 50-foot light running north-south. This sculpture would illuminate twice daily, in the morning and the evening, along with a recording of his musical reimaginings of Fiddler on the Roof's Sunrise, Sunset. The work for me surfaced concepts of Dallas as a transient city with 2 airports and countless highways, but also its historic relationship as a throughway for cattle drives on the Shawnee Trail and the city's relationship to the railway and the river.
This was right during the pandemic of 2020, so people would come, and it was like the first time people were leaving their houses, and no one knew how to walk around.
Or say hello.
Or say hello or anything, and it was kind of this beautiful, strange, surreal, funny moment in the park where people would come and hear the soundtrack, and it was kind of like a seance or something.
Breath, Ascent, Reveal, a nighttime video installation by New York-based sculptor Asif Mian. Tucked under the trees, a looping projection sits over a shallow pool, which serves as a plinth, doubling the image, but also reflecting the surrounding park. The screen, standing as both monolith and intimate cinema. A classically trained performer under the gaze of thermal imaging cameras used in military and border patrol drones, tries to escape the halls of a nameless institutional setting, conjuring ideas of surveillance, identity, body politics, and the charged nature of the breath during the pandemic.
We had to clean that pool out a lot. It got really gross.
Water features are the worst.
Yeah. For Desire Paths, a flexible collective of female artists from Austin, LA, and New York called Material Girls looked at the park as a place for natural inquiry, observation, and contemplation. The term Desire Paths, some of you might know, refers to a non-sanctioned path worn or eroded by human or animal traffic, often the shortest or most easily navigated route between origin and destination. Each artist in the collective created a custom bench with added sculptural elements. From above, each bench almost looked like interlocking puzzle pieces. Colored fragments of rope gently guided viewers towards and around these bench sculptures, allowing visitors to notice subtle details inside the park, like the sun's reflection on a sundial, the protective and precious patterns of shade cast by a handmade umbrella, the strength of a breeze determining the shape of a blow-up boyfriend body, which you see here. He has a suit on for his fancy job. Each piece encouraged you to think about the idea of touch. This was really important for the Material Girls, thinking about touch during the time of the pandemic, whether physical, emotional, or imaginary. And this quote comes from the zine that they made for the show. Just when you think you know a place, it changes. Nearly Natural, curated by Nathaniel Hitchcock, a New York curator born and raised in Waco, Texas, looked at ways in which artificial and natural landscapes influence and affect the other, questioning the interrelationship between technologies of illusion and the act of inhabiting a site. In his text from the exhibition on hedges, Hitchcock writes, "Images of nature are flexible. The visual language of making a tinted landscape can appear as wild through repetition over generations and is increasingly legible as human intervention." A few favorites in the show included Letha Wilson's large-scale, here, I'll click over to it. This tower played sounds on the hour. Yeah, okay. Letha Wilson, it's like a natural lisp. Letha Wilson, creating a large-scale white wall, an architectural rift in the trees along the edges of the park, and Andreas Angelidakis, bringing designs rendered in a 3D planar game space into the park as functional objects.
In the midst of the work on these exhibitions, an idea began to percolate. What if we could formalize this gift of time for artists to develop their projects? In 2021, we launched Sculpture School, a year-long exhibition development program modeled on turning the city into a classroom. Sculpture School was born out of our own experiences in academia, our own discomfort with high levels of debt, the pay-to-play model, and the lack of valuable real-world experience. Let's face it, art school education is simply out of step with the current realities. So we put out an open call for artists and launched our concept into the world.
The theme we picked for our first program was the Texas Blackland Prairie, the eco-region in Dallas, the ecoregion where Dallas is located, the most endangered large ecosystem in North America, currently only less than 1% remaining. With the help from Sweet Pass Friends, we created a 300-page reader about the Blackland Prairie, the history of Dallas, and public art-related theory. We selected 6 artists from our open call from Dallas, Austin, Houston, Miami, Brooklyn, and Bogota to come to Dallas, and over the course of 2 weeks in June of 2021, we conducted a broad survey of a lost prairie, exploring remnant parcels in the Clymer Meadow, which is about an hour north of Dallas, and Frankfurt Church, and the manufactured prairie of the George W. Bush Library. During our intensive, we visited nearly 20 sites. We almost died. It was so much work, but it was wonderful. We have some maybe people who can attest for that. During this time, we collectively explored Dallas and its surrounding landscape. We considered the built environment and its entanglement with nature. And over the past year since our intensive, these artists have been developing their projects collectively and will exhibit their projects beginning, we also did that at the Nasher. Opening May 14th inside Sweet Pass Sculpture Park.
How about that plug? So the Sculpture School exhibition opened on May 14th, so please join us. We don't want to spoil the surprise of the images of the artist projects here tonight, so instead, now we would like to share with you a few of our favorite sites that we visited with our cohort during this intensive. Places that resonated with our artists and act as microcosms for our collective findings about the current state of the landscape in Dallas and the Texas Blackland Prairie. Some of these you may know, and some of these you may not. So, the Waterfall. The I-35 Waterfall on Goat Hill was built in 1956 as an ad for the San Antonio-based Pearl beer. The rushing water was meant to signal that the company's deluxe lagers were made with pure and refreshing water from Artisan Springs. For over 60 years, it has been an ad space for beer and spirits, almost exclusively, and also the site of frat parties, vandalism, and detergent bombs. In a city center with no natural features, the Waterfall has become an iconic landmark. Friend of the park and Dallas native Travis Lamoth tells a story about his father and his inside joke that they developed in his youth. Every time they would drive past, he would say, "Look, Dad, a waterfall," to which his father would say, "What waterfall?"
Okay. Fuel City. On South Riverfront Boulevard, past Bellbond Row, Daiquiris to Go, and the Flood Protection Pump Station, under electrical pylons and nestled in the intersection of two freeways, is Fuel City, where dreams come true. Trademark. There is a tremendous energy here, like standing in a ley line or a vortex. The kitsch roadside American vibes comes from its mini ranch. There's a donkey, longhorns, and even a zebra. Various Texas-sized car washes. My favorite is the Cowboy. Great cheap tacos made to order, and large concrete sculptures punctuating the property. Friend of the park, Finn Jubach, was told that the livestock is used for creating an agricultural tax-exempt status, an incredibly shrewd idea for a gas station that did $30 million in sales in 2020. In our scant research, we didn't find anything to corroborate, but we enjoy the urban myth of this as Dallas's own Disneyland.
John Bunker Sands Wetland. 30 minutes south of Dallas, outside of Seagoville, lies a completely man-made wetland and a truly sci-fi landscape, made possible by a unique public-private partnership between the North Texas Municipal Water District and the Rosewood Corporation, international real estate company established in 1930s by oil tycoon H.L. Hunt. This 2,000-acre wetland, known as the East Fork Water Reuse Project, is a marvel of biomimicry. It provides water for approximately 1.7 million people in North Texas, utilizing gravity and 24 wetland plant species that naturally filter river water. A descendant of H.L. Hunt, John Bunker Sands first created the wetlands based on his interest in conservation, but also as a way to sustainably raise Brahman cattle for Wagyu beef. I believe, but it's not clear, that they also used the wetlands for a time to raise crawfish. As you can imagine, there is a lot of wildlife with incredible bird watching, coyote sightings, and the invasive nutria, which are actively hunted on the property by a full-time staff of professional hunters. In 2012, 2 American bald eagles created a nest 80 feet above the ground on an Encore, that's the local power company, transmission tower. This tower, an otherwise perfect roost for an eagle, was an active pathway for 350,000 volts of electricity. Fearing for the safety of the birds and their brood, the Wetland concocted a plan to relocate the arm, which held the nest, to a dummy tower 1,200 feet away, creating an uncanny echo in the landscape.
George W. Bush Library, Laura W. Bush Native Texas Park. When you take a tastefully landscaped garden and attach it to a war criminal's library, you get something that is very American, very Dallas. And being so proximal to highways, high-rises, and sports fields, the Native Texas Park, attached to the George W. Bush Library on SMU's campus, provides an odd collection of sightlines and soundscapes. According to the website, this 15-acre park reflects, quote, President and Mrs. Bush's love of the native Texas landscape. Visitors can explore native Texas environments such as Blackland Prairie, post oak savanna, and cross timber forest. Indigenous limestone is visible throughout the Texas landscape as the unifying material for both the park and the building. The 15-acre native park is built as a giant bowl, designed to block highway sound, but also to feed the rainwater collection system that supplies 50% of the irrigation required to sustain the landscaping. According to our landscape designer friend, the cost of such beauty was nearly $40 million to create and cost something to the tune of $1 million annually to populate and maintain. When you visit the park, be sure to look down at the ground where you'll see that embedded in the soil is a plastic filament mesh which helps prevent soil erosion.
The Dallas Wave. As the city believed the lumbering Trinity River Corridor project needed a bit more zing in the public imagination, they invented what can only be described as a perfect lawsuit. An artificial whitewater rapid in the usually placid Trinity. Denver comes to Dallas. Proposed as a $1 million public project, the price tag eventually ballooned to $4 million. After some negative press from the Dallas Observer, read it, it's very funny, the park department decided to close the attraction. Unfortunately for them, federal law prohibits closing a navigable river, so the wave was reopened to much anxiety. Then the realization set in that the law also stipulates that a river must be navigable in both directions, a difficult task given the design. Also paired this bungle with further negative reporting that discovered samples of E. coli in the water at the rapids was roughly 10 times the EPA's safe number for a recreational area. And that wasn't when it was raining. So after 7 years, they partially removed the attraction. This is a quote. It was sold to us with watercolor renderings showing a bright blue river churning between mounds of boulders. What we got looked more like a drainage ditch. The thing wasn't just dangerous, it was ugly, cheap-looking, an abomination. An approximation of nature in the midst of the real thing. I only hope that when they yank the wave's concrete foundation from the river bottom, the city will preserve it as a monument to waste, foolishness, and unbridled hubris. Put it next to the Henry Moore sculpture out on City Hall Plaza. It's the real Dallas piece. That's Robert Wilansky from the Dallas Morning News just coming in hot.
The Leonhard Lagoon. Named after philanthropist Dorothea Leonhardt, this man-made lagoon was built in 1936 with Works Progress admission funds for the Texas Centennial Exposition. The water feature was placed by George Dahl to provide park visitors a respite from the busy exposition exhibits. Over the years, the fertilizer used on the surrounding grass created runoff that frequently mixed with the waters, resulting in an overgrowth of algae, a dead swamp that killed all the fish and choked out all plant life, also known as eutrophication. Walking by the hideous slime hole every day on the way to work, Harry Parker, then director of the Dallas Museum of Art, asked New York-based artist Patricia Johansson to redesign and restore the badly degraded lagoon. It has since become the textbook example of bioremediation as art. So I'll show some slides, and this is from Patricia Johansson's website. Quote, I began to develop my own list of concerns, which included creating a functioning ecosystem for a wide variety of plants and animals. I also wanted to control bank erosion and create paths so people could cut across the lagoon. I eventually chose 2 native Texas plants as models for the sculpture, the Delta duck potato, had a massive twisted roots that I arranged to prevent water from eroding the shoreline, while spaces between the roots became microhabitants for plants, fish, turtles, and birds. The roots were built as 5-foot wide paths that people could walk on, while thinner stems rose out of the water and became perches for birds. Leaves further out in the lagoon became islands where animals could rest. The second sculpture at the opposite end of the lagoon was based on a Texas fern. The fern functions as a bridge, not a direct pathway over the water, but a network of crossovers, islands, and stopping points. It took until 1986 before it was complete, and now the piece sits largely unknown and unrecognized and in need of major repairs and restoration. But you can still walk on it in Fair Park. It's very beautiful.
Okay, so we had to pick one Prairie piece. So I chose the Frankfort Prairie. In North Texas, there are remnants of a tiny prairie town called Frankfort, with an old cemetery, a creek, and a white frame church from 1897. A 2.5-acre area on the cemetery property avoided being plowed, probably because of the cemetery, and harbors remnant prairie species which have been left to grow freely since 2010. The small remnant harbors at least 200 species, many that are difficult to establish, and are indicators of pristine Texas Blackland prairie. The settlement of Frankfort, a community on the Shawnee Trail, was near natural springs along the Halls branch of the Trinity River and an essential outpost for Native Americans, pioneers, and cattle wranglers. The land around what was left of the Frankfort site was sold and eventually developed as the Bent Tree Subdivision Country Club and Golf Course. But it's very beautiful, and I recommend it. It's a good afternoon.
All right, here we are, the sky, the future. The future for Sweet Pass and where it sits in its acre lot in West Dallas, according to the renderings we've seen, will be high-rise office spaces at the edge of the development known as Trinity Grove. A video produced by the Trinity Grove developers, easily found online, ignores any history or cultural foundation in West Dallas and names it The Last Frontier, joyfully celebrating the vertical possibilities. What's the saying that history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it rhymes? From their video, quote, with entitlement support from the city allowing for over 9 million square feet of construction with no height restrictions, the sky is the limit. Trinity Grove continues to evolve and will soon be home to a best-in-class international boutique hotel, 1,000 multifamily residential units, and office buildings with unsurpassed views of downtown. This development is one of the last remaining pieces of real estate in the city of Dallas where you can truly be in the heart of it all and shape the future of this thriving community. Be a part of Dallas. Be a part of Trinity Grove.
End quote.
End quote.
So the reality of our Sweet Pass project is that this site is only temporary. Like so many artist-run projects, we lie in a space between worlds. Terry and I were talking at the cafe, we said, the gentrifiers are gentrified by the gentrifiers, yeah. So for now, it's like this cycle. So we now have our stake in West Dallas, and Sweet Pass will continue working the landscape to be a site for experimental and unique projects while serving artists in the surrounding community. We are a scrappy and helplessly idealistic nonprofit. We joke all the time that this is a terrible business model. All of our funding is grassroots-driven, small donations and local grants, not funded by corporations or captured by elites. Our board is artists and arts professionals, art nerds. Our guiding principle is to be the kind of space that we would love to do a project with.
We believe in an art world where artists work in service for each other, and we strive to collectively create systems that benefit the cultural ecosystems we inhabit. Our upcoming goals are to find a more permanent space for Sweet Pass, maybe find our sculpture ranch, and continue to support local, regional, and international artists. We will continue building and developing our sculpture school program. Our next open call will be at the beginning of 2023 with a concluding exhibition in 2024. We're dedicated to this project and we're always looking for volunteers and new collaborations. So we hope to see you all very soon at the park. Check our website for our upcoming openings and our public events.
Thank you for your attention, and
Sweet Pass forever. Yeah, this is good. Hawk Hawk's working. Hawk's always working. That was a lot of info. So if you guys have any questions about Sweet Pass or West Dallas, maybe we have some answers. We've been digging in since we've been in the space, so feel free.
Or any of the projects that you saw
Yeah.
on the screen.
Yes, Cheryl.
How do you feel that your own studio practice has influenced the development of this project?
I think for me, I started working in undergrad outdoors. I think I had teachers that just really pushed me to kind of think about sculpture and outdoor spaces. So I think I've always kind of been working in that way. And like I said before, trying to convince others to work in that way. So, and I think too, living in New York, it was such a grind to kind of like have your practice and get your work out there in a way. So when we came to Dallas, it was like also trying to find a way to, yes, continue our own studio practices, but then also reach out and have a space for other artists to do that were younger than us and that maybe wanted to kind of have an opportunity to work in that way that maybe they wouldn't have had otherwise. So, maybe it's kind of selfish, but, I think we get the best of both worlds because all the work that we do at the park is like getting to work with other artists, getting to kind of like work outdoors and then creating like a niche that maybe wasn't here before. So it feels, really generous where sometimes, I don't know if you guys feel, but like studio work can sometimes feel very, insulated. So it feels kind of like I get to kind of balance out that.
The only thing I would add is we have a joke all the time that we say, like, we're importing our friends, like, for these projects. Like, we want to bring people around that we want to be around. And I think also, too, it's about, really loving the process of creating an exhibition and, like, the fabrication, and also the openings and, like, doing all that stuff. And I think that's part of the reason we run this project is because it's like, if you're lucky, you get a solo show every 2 years if you're doing great. You know what I mean? So it's a way to keep it going and to keep a community sort of churning, That's how I feel. Anyone else?
Yes. Well, I heard you got some grants from the city. That's great. I wondered how you funded it. Are the people that you bring into your school, do they pay a tuition or do you offer that free, or how do you fund their projects and all of that?
Yeah, we made a choice that we were always going to pay artists and not have them pay us. That was just what we decided to do. So we fundraise. We sell T-shirts, and we also sell a dog bowl, which is really funny. It's a replica of the Armut Duchamp piece that is a dog bowl, and that has been a great fundraiser for us. But we also
Armut.com.
Yeah. So that's been one of the things, and we're just kind of constantly coming up with creative ways of raising capital, which some are, give us a donation, and some are like capitalistic in nature too. So, but we definitely don't want people to pay us to go to this school, so we provide a stipend for the artists to attend.
And we want to keep it that way, but, I think too, Trey and I have been artists for so long, and so often artists have to kind of do things just for exposure or have to pay to kind of do a thing. So, those are fine ways of working, and, if you have the time and resources to do that, it's wonderful. But Trey and I were kind of never wanting like time or money to be major obstacles for doing the thing that we wanted to do. And we were really nervous about that at first because we were like, okay, we've got like $50. What are we gonna do? And for the first year, it was out of our own pocket, but our shows were minimal and we were asking our friends, and it was kind of like a collective friend volunteer effort, and then as the years have kind of gone on, we have been able to apply for grants. We turned Sweet Pass into a nonprofit in 2019, which then really helped us be able to kind of tap into some of those city resources. So it's just been a learning experience for us. Fundraising is weird for us, but also too, I mean, it's also really wonderful to kind of be able to speak through Sweet Pass, to kind of like ask for resources or help or in-kind donations, instead of being like, hi, I'm Tamara, I'm an artist, I need money to make my art. So that's kind of been like a really wonderful kind of facade that we can function behind to support for keeping it going. And it's been self-sustaining since, I'd say, like mid-2019. But we were like really stretching. Like if we had $100, we could really make that go far. So our artist stipend started out really small. We were like, okay, we've got $75, and then we've grown it up, developed it up. So, and that's what we want to continue to do. So we want Sculpture School to continue to be free.
Yes.
Have you looked into partnering with any institutions or with the city for that sort of longer-term goal that you have, like considering what's happening with the land in West Dallas and everywhere?
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, yes, these are things that we need help with. This is one of the realizations that we've had recently. We're expanding our board, and we're sort of looking for people to take on those sorts of initiatives in that realm. We've gotten a lot of great advice, and we just need to act on it. We need to make a plan for that stuff. But we definitely are constantly, hyperactively looking for any angle, anything that we can find.
And we've partnered with a lot of
we have
even the Nasher and the DMA and
SMU
and
UNT. Yeah.
So we've partnered in ways, but yeah, to kind of have that partnership that's like, give us a 20-year lease partnership, that's definitely what we're kind of looking for, working towards. Because where Sweet Pass is located now, if any of you guys have been there, it's very easy to get to it. So if we have an opening, you could just kind of be driving around town and visit relatively easy. So, an acre lot 5 minutes from downtown is kind of unique. So, we've been really lucky to kind of have the location that we have now. I don't know if we'll be able to kind of maintain that. It would be great to, but, when we started Sweet Pass, I think we were always envisioning it as this Bayul, like Trey said, this thing can kind of move, and it could be in our backyard if it needs to be, or it can be somewhere else, and it can just be wherever we are, and people can find it and come to it. So, I think, we're not leaving anytime soon, but I think in the next 5 years, 10 years, we want to find something that does have a little bit more of an anchor. But if you know of anybody.
Yeah. There you go. Terry?
So with that, I'm thinking about like if you had something that had that kind of space and it became a destination as opposed to, like you said, something you could drop into as you were doing other things. How would that change the way have you thought about that, like how that would change the nature of Sweet Pass?
Yeah, I mean, yes. There's like I said, we have this Google Doc that we started so many years ago. So we have like all these kind of contingencies and plans and stuff for things to arise. Like if like we get a space and it needs to be open, more typically, and then rather just kind of like a pop-up model. I think in that case, sculptures might live a little bit longer. Shows might have a little bit longer of a life cycle rather than this kind of like 3 to 5 months thing that we've been doing so far. Because right now it's just sort of an outdoor gallery, or outdoor project space. And I think if we had more of a footprint, or we had something that had to be maintained a little bit differently given the reality, it would definitely change. And it's a conversation that we have a lot about, what comes next. We do this 5-5-5-5 thing, where it's like 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years.
5 hours, 5
Yeah.
days, 5.
Yeah. So we kind of we run those things a lot.
But I think too, I mean, we've been privileged to kind of be in Dallas. So like Dallas has been a material for us. So, if we go somewhere else, I don't know if we would have as much, material to kind of play off of. I mean, Dallas has so many weird things about it, so many kind of strange things that have been kind of swept under the rug, some really wonderful things. So we have a lot.
There's a name we call it attention. It has attention, with Sweet Pass in Dallas and sort of the way Dallas can be. There's so many different Dallases, so you can't really call it one thing. But I do think there is this innate tension between a non-commercial space and a place like Dallas, which is, frankly, hyper-commercial. So it's interesting and it's been fruitful, I think, too.
That's exactly what I was thinking about, how you develop this relationship, both kind of digging up the dirt, and which congratulations on the research you've had to do, and that's a big commitment. I really appreciate that about your practice. But then yes, moving to some place where you develop a relationship with a community, and it just, I guess, would be a very different thing. And I guess, that might be the fun of it. But that tension is a great way to describe it. I'm glad you brought that up, because that does seem to be part of its charm.
And time, having time with a place, with the material, with the work. We're still discovering things about the park and, the place and the ways in which we do shows, and we've had the park now for almost 4 years. So time is, I think something that we really value. The idea of moving Sweet Pass to a whole new place is almost kind of oh my gosh, what would we do? Because we do have these roots, I think what we forgot, I wasn't really planning, we were oh, we're just going to go to Dallas, we'll start this thing, and then all of a sudden your roots kind of start growing, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I can't just it's a major thing to kind of pull out the roots. So, I think I've noticed that since we've been here. It's I didn't want roots in Dallas, but it just happened, They're there, so now I'm gonna keep them healthy, I guess, So it's a weird thing to kind of notice, because I don't feel like I ever had roots in New York. I don't know if my roots grew there as much as I wanted them to. So I don't know. I think it depends on the timing, the project, the people, all those factors to kind of create the soup. What happens?
Do y'all ever feel that artist-run spaces are given a harder time justifying their occupation of space in comparison to other fields or occupations in Dallas or anywhere else? And why do you think that is?
We're going to be continuing this next Tuesday. Because I think, even we say it a little bit too. Sometimes I think people hear artist-run space and they think DIY, not professional, thrown together. There's this kind of, sometimes a connotation that comes with that. Not always, but I think, I don't know, there is kind of a way that maybe it's not about being commercial, it's about artists, and I don't know, it's upside down. But I think artists are the best curators, and artists have the best eyes for, and the best way to support other artists. So, it's unique. I think it just depends on where you start it. But I think Dallas needs more artist-run spaces. I don't think there's enough in Dallas. So I do think when there are those places, they seem oh wow, look at this weird thing, But when there's 500 of them, then they start to have a power and a presence. So
And artist-run spaces have sort of a lifespan too. It's only so far you can sustain something. too. I think like some people, they start to say like, well, when are they going to close their doors? Or something like that. And we've also talked about it a bit too. It's like, also there is like in the arts in general, there is sort of a stamp system, like unspoken sort of like passport that you have, where you get like stamps of approval from like whether it's a write-up or another institution that works for you or something like that. And it's like if your book of stamps isn't filled the right way, then people are like kind of like, I don't really know about that space. So you have to kind of make your own stamps, and then like people are like, look at this guy making his own stamps. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's a funny tension that we have with that.
But the financial stuff is there, you don't, want it to be the main thing, but like you have to find a way to make this thing work and last, and oftentimes that's just like finding the resources and funding to like keep it cleaned and maintained and like paying people to help you, so that is something that, is there. And I think too with artist-run spaces sometimes maybe is the factor why they don't last as long as they would like. But, I don't know, find your rich friends out there to help you.
So to kind of follow up on that and to go back to the idea of the plan for a destination type format versus something that you have now where people can come and go. What about the temporary model, like actually using that as the matrix or format for it as something temporary? So you say it's a permanent place for temporary projects. What if it was a temporary place for permanent projects? But, what about that?
Well, yeah, I think that little fun catchphrase we came up with is like I think Sweet Pass is wherever this project is, right? That's the permanent space. Like we don't want the organization of Sweet Pass to go anywhere, and like we have a T-shirt every year, and our T-shirt this year is Sweet Pass Forever, and like because we're really trying to set it up where this thing will have a life, will be sustainable, and whatever form it has to take to do that, it's that kind of I think it's that kind of a creature. It'll kind of mutate to fit what is possible, and like, during the pandemic, we mutated because nobody could do art events, they couldn't be inside, and we were nothing but outside, and everybody could come, and so it was really, I don't want to say it was good for us. The pandemic was not good for us. But it was a moment where people were like, oh, it makes sense to be outside, and so we were able to host things and people that were very gracious of that, So I feel like, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but I feel like it mutates, and that's one of the things that we do with this project is we've allowed it to take it, it's a life of its own, and it's like, okay, we'll do this thing, and then like, okay, I like that one thing of that project, so let's carry that into the next thing, and it's sort of this cumulative round song that keeps getting sung, and it's every time there's like a new voice in it, and that's kind of.
And when it becomes bigger than just me and Trey, it feels great. It can just be the thing that people seek out and want to know more about, and it's we've noticed that. We'll get kind of messages and things that somebody else said, like, oh, I saw a Sweet Pass tote bag in LA, or like something weird, or, make a connection with something. And it just feels incredible to have, because sometimes you don't always have that with your own studio practice. Sometimes you do if you're really lucky, but having Sweet Pass like bleed out into other cities and other artists' brains, also feels incredibly productive, and like the way in which you feel, like for me, I feel successful. When you think about what it means to be successful as an artist, it's like, oh yeah, when you can make a thing that that can just live in the world, kind of outside of yourself. So we can't kill it. It's living and will be around forever, whether we like it or not. Yeah, so. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, I have a question. Yeah, I do have a vague question. So what would you say is like the stock of the Sweet Pass soup? Is it Dallas, or is it both of you? Like, or is it?
They're really great volunteers that
Yeah.
help a lot.
This row, all this row right here. That's a great question. I think it's all of those things. I think it is Dallas. I think it's the people that help us. I mean, it's been incredible to kind of like come into Dallas and find a group of people that care about the same things we care about. And it's also, I think, Trey and I kind of have this like masochism for like wanting the thing to happen, like no matter what, and like not giving up in that regard, you know, and just saying like, we have this idea, like we're old, we're almost 40, we've got to do this. Okay, just let me feel old, okay? But like having this idea, we've got to do it, like now is the time. I lost the room. Well, I'm just saying, for me as a personal, you know, so that drive to say like, this is the time, we've got to do it no matter what. And I mean, I think Trey and I have a lot of energy and like sweat equity that we are willing to just like let be, you know, eternal for the part.
Yeah, we've got poor boundaries.
Yeah, we do. Poor boundaries.
I think the stock, I mean,
stock.
also too, I mean, it's going to sound corny, but it is also the community that we've found since being here. I mean, really, though, honestly, I've lived in New York and I lived in LA, and I didn't have this kinds of friends in the art scene before. I mean, it's been kind of remarkable. I mean, really, we've met so many great people. And then, like, Dallas in itself is such a transient place. We mentioned that in the talk, but, like, we've met so many people that have come and gone since this time, too. And it just seems like they keep coming and they keep going. But, like, it's been very nice. I mean, it is a special little community. And because everybody really, like, hugs up to each other, like, because they need each other. Yeah. Anything else?
Your best equipment rental?
Oof.
Wait, that was a plant. Well, we just did an excavator, like, pretty recently.
Way too big.
Way too big.
We didn't need that.
I was like bumping into trees. We're like, why is this so big? That was pretty cool, though. We dug. For the next show, there's a hole in the park.
Like 8 feet deep.
Yeah.
It's a liability, major liability.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Auger's always fun, though. You know, just.
Not as fun as watching people use the auger. You learn a lot about somebody
We made
by watching them with an auger.
Nathaniel Hitchcock. I don't think he's ever held a tool, work the auger, and we saw a new man emerge from the cocoon. So also too, teaching people how to use tools is fun for us too. But I think mine would be the auger.
Thank you.
Hi, so in the 80s in the Lower East Side in New York, before you were born, evidently,
84.
we had a sculpture park
Okay.
in a vacant lot. And it was unadministered, like it was a completely different time. And in today's like litigious society, we could never, ever do anything like that ever again. So how do you, like you just mentioned the liability, how do you handle, do you ever worry or does it ever get out of hand? I mean, our spot got out of hand a lot, and I guess we were just lucky. Or nobody sued anybody then, I'm not sure which.
Right.
But how do you deal with that? Because if you do become a success, you get a lot of people there and a scene starts to happen. How do you keep it under control? Or do you?
I mean, we have general liability insurance.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and we have a gate.
We luckily have a fence.
Because I went by
Yeah.
today and
Yeah.
I didn't see any kind of
Yeah, so we have a gate, so we can close it when we're not there. Of course, I mean, it's very easy, you could just, there's holes all over the place. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
crappy gate.
yeah.
But there's kind of like enough there that psychologically feels like it's either open or closed. And when it's
Okay.
open, we're there. And we have lots of people who help us kind of like help when we do have open hours. But I mean, so far, I mean, there's a lot of room. And so far, I mean, we've had a couple like dog fights. But really, nothing.
No lawsuits.
Drop-in openings where people fall
I mean,
down.
there's plenty of those, but
Yeah, but you can kind of, we have a wheelbarrow. You can just kind of take it to the street.
Good job.
But so far, you know, nothing too crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, I think too, that's the thing that we enjoy about having the park, because this lot is really just whatever we want, so we can dig huge holes and like cut down trees and strap things to trees, and I mean, we were strapping those TV monitors to trees, and I mean, so it's great because we kind of have free range over it, so there is it feels kind of wild, but
Yeah, it's not the Nasher Sculpture Garden where you have to like worry about the grass or
Yeah.
something. You know, it's not that. So we let people do whatever. Like the weirder, the better. But yeah,
what was the name
it's
of
in the
this
back of
park?
our head though.
The Rivington School,
Okay.
Rivington School, yeah.
Anyone else?
So kudos to you. I mean, I didn't think that this kind of thing was possible anymore.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Seems like a nice place.
Yeah.
Say goodnight, that's lovely.
Thank you guys, and come to the
Yeah,
park.
thank you.